you completely new to investing and don't know where to start? Are you already investing but wondering whether there's a better way to do it? Or does the whole idea of investing make you nervous? If you answered yes to any of those questions, this episode of The Investing Show is for you.
I guess there's the whole glorification of instant gratification and quick wins and quick money. I just don't think it worked. The golden rules for me with my approach really is diversification and low fees. Ultimately, I say to people, it's your money. Do whatever you want with it. But if you want a better life in the future, you just start investing sensibly today.
Our guest is Ryan King. Ryan is a chartered accountant who started investing at university. He's the founder of the online financial education platform, Making Money Simple. He's also the author of Stop Waiting, Start Investing, Build Wealth with 10 Minutes of Work, a new book published by Harriman House. Believe me, Ryan's story is inspirational. He's also a brilliant communicator. Listening carefully to what he has to say over the next half an hour could be the best investment you'll ever make. Let's get started. Ryan, most people don't even think about investing at university. You started investing at university. You also set up your own financial education platform in your final year. How did that come about?
Yeah, it was a busy final year of university in 2019. To be honest, I was quite fortunate. I just stumbled across, I've always been quite interested in sort of money, investing, the stock market, but I never really knew much about it other than what I'd see online in the news or see just through films. But fortunately, I stumbled across a few good personal finance and investing books in 2017 time. And then through that, started investing and then, set up Making Money Simple, where I try and originally just break down very basic stuff. And then over the years, it's grown into a lot more than that.
So what sort of books did you come across? Because of course, most young people, they tend to look at trading sites. They're interested in cryptocurrencies, trading stocks and so on. But it sounds as though, you went to some really good sources.
Yeah, the very first book I read in classic fashion was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think I actually first started on YouTube, watching a lot of YouTube videos on the stock market, how to start investing. And actually at the same time, I didn't even realize, because I had done a placement year working in London, I was auto-enrolled into a workplace pension, which obviously a lot of people I speak to don't even realize. Your workplace pension, you are an investor. I didn't realize that myself the first year, but as that was going on, and I was understanding that, I then read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a few other books such as I'll Teach You to Be Rich, the Little Book of Common Sense Investing, written by Jack Bogle. That's probably one of my favorite books on investing. And that's sort of then, I guess, I made a few mistakes as well, investing into high fee funds, trying to trade individual stocks. But then luckily, very early on, I settled on index funds. And then 7 years later, still following a very similar approach.
Well, that's right. There is this school of thought, isn't it? You should let young people kind of make their own mistakes. And of course, in investing and trading and so on, young people do make lots of big mistakes. You actually made some yourself, but it sounds as though you learned from them very early on.
Yeah, I made quite a few mistakes in my first few months. So opening up an investing account with my high street bank, I thought you had to use your bank to invest. I didn't realize there was actually specific specialized investment platforms which usually offer lower fees and more options. I didn't use a stocks and shares ISA or a pension. I was using a general investment account which has no tax advantages. I then started investing into a high fee fund. I was investing into random stocks based on tips I would see online. I was paying high fees. I was making, in the first few months, I made all sorts of mistakes. Luckily though, and the way I try to think about it is, at least I made them with only a few £100s rather than thousands of pounds. And number one, I guess it's good to make them because then you can sort of learn from them and I sort of share them online. But also, I guess as I sort of mentioned, it's better to make them on smaller amounts rather than starting with thousands of pounds. And that's probably one good thing actually about starting small. When I did actually properly start investing, it was £100 per month into a stocks and shares ISA. And actually starting small is probably good because you can then build up that habit, understand how volatile investing is, and then increase my contributions over time. And now we're here 7 years later.
Investing is such an important life skill, and yet it's just not taught in schools, not even in sixth forms. It's not taught in colleges, universities properly. In your book, you even say that, when you started working in chartered accountancy, that actually, there is a widespread lack of knowledge about investing, even in that profession. Why do you think that is?
I don't know if it's, I feel like money, I feel like it's better in America. I think in the UK, money's still a bit of a taboo subject. And whether it's at home, at school, even at work, people don't really like talking about money or like being transparent about stuff. And that's actually why, if we make it really simple, I'm very transparent about what I invest into, how much I invest per month, how I built my portfolio, because I've not really done anything special. I've just used my 9-to-5 income mainly to build up my pot over the last 7 years. But I really just think it's a bit of a taboo subject, to be honest. And I think also people think that it's some sort of really complicated, like fairy tale investing, Wolf of Wall Street, all of this stuff, when in reality, it's literally the complete opposite of that. It's very simple, and it really is very just, or you can make it very passive and stress-free if you want to.
Absolutely. This is something I really like about your book, that it makes investing simple, and you start by setting out some sort of key principles that investors need to understand, the most important of which is compounding. So, for people watching, listening, what do they need to know about compounding?
Yes, I think compound interest is often very misunderstood and overcomplicated, to be honest with you. But it's simply just where you earn interest on interest, or when we talk about investing, it's really where you earn a gain or return on your previous gain or return. So in practical terms, what that means is if you invest into something and then you make a positive return, by leaving that positive return invested, that then becomes part of your bigger pot, and that then has a chance to earn further gains or interest year after year. And it can seem it almost seems a bit pointless in the first few years. You're investing a few £100, you get your portfolio up to maybe a couple of £1,000s, and you make sort of 7-8%. It just seems a bit sort of, it does seem pointless, and it's quite hard to think of what's the point in this, but it's really only when, and now 7 years in, and I built myself a 6-figure pot, where you can just really start to see the power of compound interest, and how by leaving your money, or keep contributing to feeding the pot and leaving the previous gains invested, and then a sort of exponential snowball effect only gets bigger and bigger. So yeah, it's just one of those things where you can only really see it after years and decades, but you've got to sort of think long-term and trust the process to actually get to that point.
So the important thing is just to get started.
100%.
And, the title of your book is spot on, stop waiting, start investing. Why do you think it is so hard for people to get started?
I think there's a few reasons. So I think number one, that there's a lot of misconceptions. People think you need loads of money to start, or you need to be rich to start. Well, that maybe years gone by, but in this day and age, it couldn't be further from the truth, to be honest with you. You can get started with a few quid on many platforms. You haven't got to have thousands and millions of pounds to invest. You can literally just start with even £10 a month, £100 a month, whether you can afford to. And secondly, I think there is still a lot of jargon, even words like stocks and shares ISA, index fund. We don't, as you mentioned, we don't get taught anything at school and get taught very little at home and at work. So you almost need to research these words. Because I think people, especially in the UK, like to understand what they're doing rather than just blindly following something. But I think all this jargon also doesn't help. But just sort of going back to the book, that's why I try and, particularly in part 3 of the book, the 3-step blueprint. So there's 3 steps to start investing. Choose a platform, choose an account, choose an actual investment. And that's why I try and lay it out. There are hundreds or thousands of options that you can choose, but I try and lay out sort of a very simple blueprint to actually start, because as you mentioned, that is the most important thing. And then once you have started, you can change your approach, change platform, change fund. But the hardest step and most important step is actually starting with 10 quid, 100 quid, and then you can take it from there.
Exactly. You mentioned all the options out there. That is another reason, isn't it, that actually slows people down and makes people think, oh, God, I wonder how I should go about this, who to believe. That makes it even harder to get started.
Yeah, 100%. I think a good comparison is like the gym. You can honestly devise the most intricate gym program, but if you don't get into the gym, you're not going to make any gains. It's the same with investing. You can do all this research, read hundreds of books, watch millions of videos, but you don't actually get started. You're never going to learn and then actually make gains like financially. So there is a lot of noise and a bit of jargon to break through, but if you can stick with it, and that's sort of why I hope the book just pieces it all together in one easy thing to read, but if you can piece it all together and get started, you'll thank yourself. And the only regret you'll have is you didn't start earlier.
So, big subject, and we don't want to stop people reading your book, of course, but what are the golden rules of successful investing?
There's quite a few. So for me, I would say being consistent is a massive golden rule. If you can actually get started and invest consistently every single month what you can afford to, that is the surefire way to build your wealth. If you can maximize and make the use of a workplace pension where you get an employer match in the UK, that's a very easy way to build your wealth. If you can then also contribute out of your net pay into a stocks and shares ISA, once again, you can build your wealth. If you can automate all of this as well, and I talk about automation in the book, I'm a massive fan of, that's probably my sort of number one personal finance tip. If you can automate as much as possible across your and your family's finances, it makes everything a lot more sort of stress-free and hands-off. But when it actually comes to investing then, my approach is very much to use global funds. So I should say index funds, and specifically global index funds. And we can sort of get into that, but the golden rules for me with my approach really is diversification and low fees. I want to be diversified and I want to have low fees. I can do that through index funds, specifically index funds. And that really is how I built the bulk of my six-figure pot over the last 7 years.
So as you say, the main benefits of index funds, diversification and low fees, it also makes it much more simple when you're not constantly having to read the financial media or look at financial websites to see which funds, sectors, countries or whatever to invest in.
Because I think this is the common thing, I've heard this a lot, and I even thought this myself. When you first start investing, you think you can only invest into individual companies like Tesco, Tesla, Apple. And then it's only luckily when I read a few books, I then discovered index funds. And I'm sort of like, okay, I've been trying to pick individual stocks. It's pretty difficult to do that. But by using an index fund, I can invest into hundreds, if not thousands of companies in one fund and then slowly build my wealth as the global economy goes up. It's certainly not a get-rich-quick scheme. Nothing like that really exists. And it's certainly not going to triple your wealth overnight. But it's very much, as we touched on, being consistent and letting compound interest do its thing, whilst you're adding your own contributions. And that really is then how, over the decades, not the days, you can then build your wealth.
Now, both the Labour and the Conservative parties have been talking in recent months about the importance of getting people to invest in the UK economy and in British companies. And of course, most of us are patriotic to some degree or other. We want to support UK firms. But actually, you're saying that global diversification is really important. Why do you say that?
I just think that there is, what you referred to, I think, is there's a bit of a home bias with a lot of investors where people will put a lot of money into UK companies or UK index funds. But my school of thought and what I believe is, it's just impossible to predict which country or company is going to perform the best. So whilst you can, if you want to support specific UK companies, you can invest into them, or a UK index fund, like a FTSE 100 index fund. I just think that I don't know which company or country is going to perform the best, but I also want my investing approach to be as simple as possible. And that is then what sort of drew me towards index funds. I think with the UK economy, and I've got some sort of data in the book, looks over the last 100 years. 100 years ago, the UK did make up 25% of the stock market. Even about 25 years ago, it was 11%. Today, it's only 4% of the stock market as the US and other countries start to dominate. So whilst you can put your eggs in the UK basket, I just think in the grand scheme of things, it makes up such a small part of the global economy. And when you can get global diversification for such a low fee, I just think it's silly not to be an international investor. I think even US investors as well have a bit of a bias towards the S&P 500, the US stock market, which once again, it's fair enough, you want to be patriotic, but I just like the global approach because there's no second guessing. As the global economy continues to grow, expand, innovate, I'm going to participate in that, and the global index fund will grow my wealth alongside it.
Exactly. You mention in the book that you're not a fan of bonds in particular. Tell me about that.
Because I'm younger, I guess. Yeah, maybe one day.
You'll like them one day?
Yeah, I mean, maybe one day down the line, but I think that people often maybe go into bonds too early. I personally think if you're in your 20s, even 30s and 40s, you still got, it does depend on your personal situation, I'll say, when you want to access the money. But if you really don't want to access the money for decades and decades, looking at historical data, the stock market will just outperform the bond market. So for me, being in my, I'll say mid-20s, nearly my late 20s now, it just doesn't make sense for me to put money in bonds. I'd rather be 100% in equities because that's what's going to build my wealth quicker over the long term. I like to say I'm in the wealth accumulation phase still. So I'm trying to invest as much as I can and grow my wealth as quick as possible. Maybe in 20, 30 years time, if I have a mortgage, a family, I might become a bit more in sort of the wealth preservation stage, and then I'll switch to bonds. But even then, I don't know, I'm not sure. I just think that the stock market produces the best returns. And if you can cope with the volatility of it, then in my opinion, it's better to stay invested in the stock market.
I think many investors have the impression that, or many people who not necessarily investing yet, have the impression that investing takes a lot of time. What you say in the book, once every few pages in fact, is that you really only need to spend 10 minutes, maybe even fewer than 10 minutes on it. First of all, 10 minutes getting started, and then maybe 10 minutes each year after that. So yeah, people might be surprised to hear it only takes 10 minutes.
Yeah, of course, it will take more than 10 minutes to read the book, but to actually get started, and there's actually a QR code in the book where it'll take you to a video where I actually got my mum set up with a stocks and shares ISA about a year ago, and to get her set up took 8 minutes, and most of that time was spent because I was recording the process. Yeah, I guess like we'll talk about sort of, so to get started, it's like you pick a platform, pick an account, pick an investment. That's probably a bit more theoretical. The actual practical side is you literally go onto an app or a platform. I'm personally a fan of Vanguard. You then literally open an account as if you're signing up to a social media page. And as you're sort of going through, you can open up a stocks and shares ISA, select the fund you want to invest into, and then boom, within 10 minutes, you can start investing. Of course, you want to read a few books, do a bit of your own research, figure out what's the best platform, what's the best account, what's the best fund. I'm happy to talk about that and my approach, and that's all why I sort of share in the book as well. But it really just takes less than 10 minutes to actually get started and get that first pound in. And then subsequently, all you're ready to do, and all I really ever do, because everything's on autopilot, if I get a pay rise, I'll log in and increase my monthly contributions. And if I get some sort of bonus or come into some money for whatever reason, I'll then once again log in and lump sum invest that amount. But you literally, once you've automated it, and that's why I'm a massive fan of automation, there's not actually much you need to do. You can, I wouldn't recommend it. You can check it every single day, but you're just gonna drive yourself mad and just stress yourself out. And I think that's another very common mistake people do, like checking it every day, like I'm up 20 pound, I'm down 50 pound, just automate it. Only check it when you need to, being to increase your monthly contribution or make a lump sum investment, and your investments will just grow passively on autopilot. And that's probably what you referred to right at the start. Trading, I'm just not a fan of. I've got no interest in. I think it's so difficult to pick stocks to beat the market. So I'd rather just be the market through an index fund and just automatically, passively grow my wealth over time.
And of course, your balance is going to be kind of up and down every day, which is one of the reasons why you shouldn't keep looking at it.
Yeah.
But the beauty is that when you're starting out, you're actually not committing huge amounts of new money to the market. So it doesn't really matter. And in fact, you explain in the book that you were actually down for about the first year. Tell me about that.
I think that's probably almost a good thing that happened. I started investing, so I accidentally started investing in August 2017 through my workplace pension. I didn't realize I was an investor. I then properly started investing in October 2018 through a £100 contribution per month. And there was then a bit of I can't remember the reason, but it was a bit of a mini tech crash towards the end of 2018. And I didn't actually then break even, I think, until the following sort of May or June. So it took nearly a year for me to actually go in the green as the platform was showing me. And I think at that point, it could be very easy to think, this is a scam. There's no point investing. Thankfully, I had financially educated myself through quite a bit of reading, watching videos, reading some articles and newsletters over that time. And I stuck with it. Most important thing, actually, I kept contributing because I automated it even during those down months. So I bought at lower prices. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's never like, I'm not going to lie to people. It's never nice losing money and being in the red, but it is a natural part of investing. So I think experiencing that firsthand for much of my first year properly investing probably then aided me going forward. And even back, I think it was this year in the end of sort of around July, August time, there was a bit of a crash in the US, and I actually ended up losing, I sort of put this on social media a few months ago, so I try and share both the highs and lows. In about a week, I lost £7,000 on paper because there was a bit of a mini crash and my global index funds were invested. But now, once again, after the US election, the markets are booming again. So it's impossible to know what's going to happen and to time anything. All you can do in your power is contribute per month and just be consistent and not get sucked into the whole sort of like fear mongering and euphoria that all the media will try and get your clicks for.
It sounds as though you're taking a very sensible, long-term view. And that's a big problem for people, isn't it? Because a lot of people, particularly your age, I mean, I was very impatient at your age as well. They want to be rich now. They want to, earn massive returns straight away. That's a big issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I do talk about this in the book, about the sort of paradox of investing, where everyone knows you can build wealth through investing, but the problem is no one wants to wait. And I get this comment quite a lot on social media. It's like, why would I want to be rich in 30 years' time? Like, I'm going to be old. And so it's sort of a bit of a balance of trying to increase your income today so you can invest more today and retire earlier, whilst also having fun today. Just don't like, and there is probably like a bit of a dark side of investing where people are investing literally as much as they can and not doing anything fun. Then you're only going, the frugality can kill you as well in a sense. So you sort of need to balance increasing your income and investing with actually having fun. So I'll still go on holiday, do some nights out, go to some nice restaurants, whilst also balancing, prioritized investing every single month. So it is sort of a two-pronged approach. And this sounds obvious, but of course, the more income you can make, the easier everything becomes, because then you can have more fun and invest more and speed up that path to financial independence.
Because there is this movement, maybe we don't hear of it quite so much these days, the FIRE, financial independence, retire early. Whereas you say, the sort of members or followers of that movement are really keen on investing every spare penny, and they do without meals out or holidays or whatever. But you're only young once. It's really important to enjoy life in the present, because let's face it, the future might not actually come.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you've got to try and find that, well, everyone's approach is going to be different. I think you can find that sort of middle ground where you're investing a decent percentage, start of 10%. If you can do 20%, that's brilliant, of your income per month, whilst also traveling, having some good experiences, having some good times. I think the problem is, a lot of people probably spend money on stuff that's a bit pointless or doesn't matter. So it could be just like clothes or materialistic stuff, or it could be buying a really flashy car that you don't need that costs you a fortune, or buying a house that's way too big for you that you don't need that eats up thousands of pounds per year. So I'd probably say it's, and this is obviously a bit of a different point, but cutting back on either pointless expenditure or trying to cut down those big pieces of expenditure, like a house and a car, then you can actually spend money on things you value and actually brings you joy, whilst also spend money, invest in your money, and then growing your wealth. Because I think if you actually explain to people, particularly when they're in their 20s, you do realize if you just don't waste away a few £100 a month on stuff you don't need and get that invested, because of compound interest, you could probably retire 5 years earlier, maybe 10 years earlier. If you make a high income, maybe 20 years earlier. I think if you put it in that frame, that would maybe get people to actually invest more and focus on that rather than just spending their money away on stuff that doesn't matter.
And people who really do want to be wealthy, say they've got no particular ambitions of retiring at 45 or whatever, but they want to be very wealthy. What your book says, quite rightly, is that if you invest properly, you can be very wealthy. It's just that it's going to take you a very long time. And you mentioned one of my favorite Warren Buffett quotes in the book about nobody wants to get rich slowly.
And I think that is the difficult part about investing, because you need patience. And there's quite sort of, I like to say, any money that is often made quickly is often lost quickly. A lot of lottery winners go broke. A lot of A-list celebrities and athletes go broke because they can't manage their money. They've not got those sort of financial education skills. So I think you sort of build that skill set, but realistically coming into that, patience is the most important factor of investing, because if you were to get rich very quickly, there's a high percentage chance you'll end up losing the money or wasting it away. So through that patience is hard, but I also like to think it does teach you things, delaying that gratification, enjoying the journey along the way.
When you're your age, you've got lots of things to spend your money on, basically, haven't you? You've got to pay for your accommodation, you've got student loans, you've got, as I say, to live your life as well and have a social life too. But it's really, really important, isn't it, to say, right, I'm going to set aside this amount every month, and for that to go out automatically on the same day every month without having to think about it.
100%. And the first step for anyone listening is you're probably working, workplace pension, whatever your employer is matching, make sure you match it, because it's literally free money. If they offer 5%, 10%, whatever you get, just match it, and you've got double the amount of money that's being invested, and that'll be compounding for decades to come. And you can then sort of combine that with then investing some of the income you receive into your bank account into a stocks and shares ISA, where people always like to know, what should I start with? Well, of course, start with whatever you can afford to, but if you want a specific goal to aim for, I'd say either 100 quid a month or 10% of the money you get into your bank account every month. Pick one of those two, set that up, the automatic contribution, and through those two pots, that, in my opinion, is really how you can build your wealth tax efficiently in the UK.
Young people, particularly young men, I know from going to football matches and seeing the perimeter advertising, and it's all about sports betting, it's about stock trading, it's about cryptocurrencies. Young men in particular are surrounded by this messaging that it pays to trade. How concerned should we be about that?
Yeah, I didn't really think about that, to be fair. That's actually a good point. I think, I guess there's the whole glorification of instant gratification and quick wins and quick money. But I think, as I said, I just don't think it works. And if you do make money quickly through literally gambling on an app or through stock trading, I just think it's so difficult to replicate that for the long term. And you almost certainly, data from history shows, whether you're actually betting or just betting on individual stocks and companies, you're probably going to lose out, which I think is why it pays literally in massive gains over the long term to take a bit of time and educate yourself on real investing, passively investing, buying and holding index funds for the long term, because that's properly what will build your wealth. Of course, you want to do a bit. So ultimately, I say to people, it's your money. Do whatever you want with it. But if you want a better life in the future, you need to start investing sensibly today.
So you're a chartered accountant. You are currently working in Australia, though you're going to be coming back to the UK at some stage. But in your spare time, you also have this financial education platform. So tell me about that and what are your aims for it?
Yeah, no, it's difficult. So I originally started Making Money Simple during my final year of university in 2019, when I had much more time than I do now, and having worked a sort of corporate 9 to 5 for about 6 years now. But I originally started just a little blog. Then I started social media, and then over time it's grown. So where now, 5.5 years later, I've got a book coming out, which is absolutely mental. So it certainly didn't happen overnight. I'm still, the whole time I'm balancing that with working mainly, also trying to have fun, go on holiday, travel, invest, and do everything else sort of in my 20s. So it has been difficult juggling it all. But I guess the main aim really is firstly to keep spreading the message of getting people to stop waiting and start investing and actually take ownership of their money. And then hopefully I would love to grow it to a point one day where I can do it full time. But unfortunately, I'm not there yet. But through the book, I do deliver workshops and help people out one-on-one as well. So hopefully one day through that, I can build up to a point where I can work solely on MMS, but not quite yet.
Oh, let's hope that is the case. Before we finish, tell us about your book. Remind people how they can make contact with you and follow your content.
Yeah, so the book is Stop Waiting, Start Investing. It's out now. I've worked with Harriman House over the last 18 months to bring it to life, and I'm very happy that it's finally out and people can buy it and give it a read. It really is a sort of beginner's guide, but I think even if you are already investing, it's probably still, particularly in your early years, it's probably still worthwhile reading it. It'll probably reinforce some concepts. It starts out with the basics of investing, why invest, how to make money from investing, compound interest, then goes into the actual investing world. What is the stock market? How does it work? What are index funds? And then finally, part 3, probably the most useful part, is the 3-step blueprint that we've already touched on. And that's the practical steps to actually start investing. So it's all sort of, I like to say, in a structured, condensed way in the book, but I do share a lot of this similar messaging through podcasts like this with you, Robin, and also just through my social media, which is Making Money Simple. I essentially am trying to pump out content on every single platform. So if you type in Making Money Simple, I'll probably come up producing, whether it's videos or tweets or TikToks, whatever it is, just trying to break down investing and share, and also personal finance as well, as well, trying to help people understand stuff. I think when I first started actually Making Money Simple in 2019, it was very much, I'd make little graphics on a little pinky background, the graphics explaining stuff. Now it's very much more like video content, face-to-face explainers, but it's really trying to break it down simply for people, and then ultimately with the book, get people to start investing.
Ryan, what you've achieved in such a short time, such a young age, is absolutely phenomenal. You are an inspiration to other young investors and a few older ones as well. We wish you all the best with your book. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's about it for this episode of The Investing Show. Remember, there's plenty of educational video content on the YouTube channel. We'd love you to give us your comments, and please do subscribe to receive our latest videos. Thank you to our guest, Ryan King, and as ever, to Timeline for supporting The Investing Show. Goodbye.